Hi everyone, welcome back to Fadal Stitches, and on today's video I'll be sharing with you the sewing process of how I achieved this beautiful v-neck blouse and inspiration gotten from this design. So I decided to recreate mine. I have uploaded the drafting process of this. So now I'm sharing with you the sewing process of the blouse. Now, if it's something you like to know how to do, please watch the video to the end and don't forget to support me by subscribing, like, make comments and share with friends. And don't forget to turn on the notification bell so that you can see more of my video. So let's dive in. Now the material I use are these 3 yards of Ankara material, then 3 yards of lining. Then I have my zipper, and I didn't end up using this particular color. It was black I used. So my tailor's chalk, my sewing thread, hasty, both white and black. Then I have my breast pad, which is the wording for padding of the bust. So let's dive in. I told you I've already uploaded the drafting process. So these are my cutout patterns. Now I'll be laying them on my fabric. I'm transferring them on my fabric. So I'll be cutting them out on my fabric. So these are my front, back, the flare, so and the collar for the blouse. So I told you I've uploaded the drafting process. So do well to check my channel for the pattern and drafting process so that you can know how I achieve the cutting, how it's being cut. So the next thing is to transfer my pattern on my fabric. You can see I've folded my fabric, and the first thing I'll be cutting out is the flare. The reason why I like cutting out the flare is because it's the widest pattern of and the widest I'll be cutting out. So I need to place it so that I'll cut it out first. Then I'll add my seam allowance because when I drafted, I didn't add seam allowance. So you can see I'm adding my seam allowance and I'm done adding. Then the next thing is to cut out the pattern. So this is me cutting out the flare. So you can see I've cut out the flare. Now the next thing is to cut out the bustier. Now I've added my seam allowance. I added half inches, but at the side seam I added 1.5 for my seam. So you can see I'm notching the bust point so that when I want to join it will align with the side. So please, all these notch are very important. Yes, you can see I've notched the side too. Yeah, so this is me cutting out my collar, and the collar it's kind of having a zigzag design, so you can see the way I achieved it. Now this is me trying to place my pattern together to know which one is for which, the front, the back, the flare, trying to know. And this is me cutting the lining for my pattern. Now the next thing is to cut out wording for the front pattern. Yes, now the wording I cut out was I measured 1.5 inches away from the neck depth. So my wording is stopping under the bust. Yes, because that is where the fullness is, from the bust to the under bust. Yes, from the upper bust to the under bust. Yes, this is me cutting out the wording and I'm notching it. So trying to check where I will be placing it. Now I've cut the front, I want to cut the side. Now this is me placing the pattern on the fabric on the wording. Yes, trying to mark the underbust of the pattern. Yes, and you can see the way I minus the seam allowance, that's the side seam allowance, away from my pattern. Yes, because the wording is not getting to that point. So it's just to contour to add fullness to my bust, so away from my pattern. Yes, and this is me trying to place it to note my bust point so that I can notch the bust point. That when I want to place it, I'll know the side to place for the upper side and for the lower side. So that's what I'm trying to do. So I'm creating a notch on the bust point so that when I want to place it, I'll know how I'm going to place the wording. Now, trying to check my pattern to know which one is for which. And after then, the first thing I added was hasty. I hasted the front part. Yes, hasty add more more what's it called, fit to your material. It makes it relax, and this is me adding wording to the center front. After adding my hasty, I added wording. Now the same thing at the side, I added hasty on the fabric, then I placed my breast part. Yes, so the next thing now is to start seaming. Now the first thing I normally do is to align the bust points together, and I will use my pin to pin it down. I'll pin it down, then I normally marked. Yes, if you're a beginner trying to get a perfect princess dart line, you're supposed to mark your seam allowance you added to it. So mine is half inches. You can see I use my chalk to mark it, and this is after I'm done sewing. Then I remove my pin. I did the same thing to the other side. Yes, and it's very good when you do this because it makes you so accurate on your line without adding any allowance to your pattern. You can see after I'm done sewing, the shape of the bust is already coming out even without me pressing it. It's coming out already. Yes, so that is the effect. It's coming out already. You can see the way it's standing. Now the same thing I did to the fabric, I'm doing it on the lining. I'm sewing my lining separate. Yes, just the way I did for the front. Now I didn't add wording to or hasty to the lining, but if you have enough, you can do that. I didn't add hasty to my back pattern. You can also hasty your back pattern, but the most important one is the front part. Now this is me trying to join my flare, and I'm done joining it. Yes, the next thing is to turn the collar. Now the collar, I decided to use a black material, and I stayed the material. Yes, I decided to, I want a different neck, I want a different pattern on my neck, so I decided to use black as the collar. Yes, I didn't use, though I used the material to turn it, but yes, the black is going to appear at the front. Yes, now this is me pressing all my pattern pieces and pressing them out. I've done pressing the front, the history, the lining, so I'm trying to check my collar. Yes, you can see I used the same material to turn it, but I prefer the black part. So the way I'm going to turn it's going to be in between the fabric. Yes, it's going to be in between, I mean in between, yes, my fabric. I'm trying to join the shoulder. So I'm going to join the fabric separate at the shoulder, the lining separate at the shoulder part. Yes, because I'm not turning the neck. I need to attach my collar first. So I'm done. Okay, this is me turning the neck. Now the next thing is to place my collar on the good side of my fabric. Yes, and make sure it's facing up. Yes, it's facing up. Now I'll run a stitch to hold my collar down. I'm trying to run a stitch to hold the collar down. Then after I'm done, I'll now place my lining on it. So the collar is going to be in between the lining and my fabric. Yes, I want it hidden inside. So if you can decide to turn your own out, like fix it like a normal way of fixing, but I want a hidden seam. So that's why I'm placing the material, the collar on the fabric first. Then after I'm done attaching it, I'll now place my lining on it and sew it together. So it's going to be in between my lining and my fabric. So the seam is going to be hidden inside the neckline. So it's not showing. But you can decide to, however you like to turn your own, you can do that, is allowed. It's not necessary you must follow my own pattern. So I just prefer it hidden inside. I don't like the seam coming out. So you can see the way it's looking very neat. So it's between my lining and my fabric. So I'm trying to notch my seam allowance. Yes, trying to notch it so that my collar can relax very well. So all those angles I need to notch it. Now the last end of the collar at the back, because the collar is extending to the back. Yes, I'm going to stitch it down, then turn it inside out. Yes, you can see me turning it inside. Yes, so I'll use my scissors tip to bring it out. Yes, I'm done turning it. Then the next thing is to close my zipper allowance. Yes, the rough edge of my zip allowance. So I'm going to turn it inside. Yes, you can see I've turned it inside. The collar is on its own. The zip allowance, I've turned that. Now the next thing is to turn your your is to seam the side seam. So it's all depend on how you normally finish your garment. You can decide to make a French seam, but me, I'm going to sew it directly because I'll be overlocking the edge. So you can decide to do French seam, that's an hidden. You sew it inside out, then before you close the seam allowance. So but me, I'm stitching it directly. So my fabric is down facing each other, then my linings are up. So after I'm done stitching, I'll go and overlock the edge. Yes, so if you don't have overlocking machine, you can do a French seam. So I'm done doing that. Then the next thing is to overlock the edge. I've overlocked the edge. Now the next thing is to fix my flare. Now to fix my flare, I'll look for the midpoint of the flare and I'll look for the midpoint of my blouse. Then I'll create a notch on both fabric. So you make sure your side seam, your princess line are aligned. Then you not create a notch and bring your flare and place it at, let it match to the center Yes, so you can see there's everything is accurate. Then the next thing is to seam it together using half inches that I added as my seam allowance. So I've done that and I've overlocked the edge. Yes, I like good finishing, so you can see the way I'm overlocking. Now the next thing is to fix my zip. Now before I fix my zip, I normally close the zip allowance together. Yes, I'll make sure, especially when I'm sewing um a empire line that has joining at the waist, I normally close the zip from up down. Then one now when I'm closing, I don't close with a permanent stitch. I figure out my zip allowance, then I increase the length, the stitch length of my machine to 5, like you're making a gather, so it's a loose stitch so that after you're done sewing, you can press and open it. So this is me sewing it, and you don't reinforce because you are going to lose this seam you are sewing, so it's not a permanent stitch. So I'm just stitching it down so that I'll press the line. So the pressed line will now serve as my guideline when I want to fix my zip. Now if you're always having issue fixing zip, you can try this method. Yes, it's very perfect, especially when you have something that has half cuts. You want to make sure they are equal at the waistline. So you can see I'm pressing it down so that after I'm done pressing, I'll open my seam. So the first line will now serve as my guideline when I'm fixing my zip. Yes, everything will be perfect. So you can see the lines are equal at the neckline. Everything is aligned. So the next thing is to open the stitch I made. Yes, it's a loose stitch. I didn't reinforce. So I'll loosen it and fix my zip. So this is me trying to lose everything out, and please when you're doing this, make sure you take off the thread. Make sure there is not any hanging thread because thread can make your work to look very rough. So make sure as you're taking it off, you're taking off the thread. Now this is me trying to fix my zip. Yes, so I'm using the first line that I've ironed. Yes, I'm using it. So it's now serving as my guideline. So I'll just place my zip and I'll start stitching it down to the end. Now this is me fixing my zip. Now if you have watched the video to this point and you have not subscribed, what are you waiting for? Do well to support me by subscribing to my channel so that you can see more of my videos. So I'm fixing my zip and I'm checking to make sure everything is aligning. Now if you want to see how this is being drafted, you can check the pattern drafting of a princess blouse on my channel. Yes, it's on my YouTube channel. So this is me. Now I'm fixing the other side of the zip. Yes, I've fixed it. So the first thing I do is to align the zip at the waistline. Yes, you want to make sure that your waistline is, so you can also use your pin to hold it down at the waistline and flip it to the right side to check if yes it's aligning. Yes, you need to make sure they are aligning at the waist before you sew anything down. So sewing it, you can see the first one I sew started from up Why this one I started from down? Yes, that's because I'm using one leg of zipper foot, so I only have one leg, so that's why I changed the direction, sewing from up, then the second one from down. So I'm done fixing the zip. I'm trimming off thread. Please make sure you trim off any excess thread you have. You don't want your work to look very rough when you're sewing. So this is how the zip is looking. You can see it's aligned at the waist and also at the neck. Yes, it's looking very okay. Now the next thing is to fix. I'm fixing my sleeve. Now I've uploaded a video on how to draft a sleeve because I don't want this video to be bulky. So I've uploaded the video on how I cut this particular sleeve, so you can check my channel to see how I made the sleeve. And this is the finished look of the garment. Yes, you can see the way it's looking. So thanks for watching. Don't forget to subscribe.